Good evening, everyone. I am sitting on Stadium Hill in picturesque Dulce, New Mexico. I can see the sandstone cliffs of the Dulce Hill Massif to the west where the sun is setting. I can see the jagged cliffs of the San Juan Mountains on the eastern horizon. The Pinon Bluffs of the San Juan Basin are undulating to the south. And north of me is Archuleta Mesa, where reliable local sources, defrocked federal employees, and even the History Channel tells us there's a 5-mile in diameter underground base that is jointly administered by the U.S. military and an alien race from outer space. Thank you so much for signing up for ARC Podcasts. I know it's total hubris to stand up in front of a crowd and think that you have something important or exceptional to say. I know that there are literally tens of thousands of brilliant, qualified, dynamic voices competing for your eyes and ears in the vast and demanding and overstimulated attention economy. Everyone wants your attention, and somehow I do too now. So I want to give a brief introduction to this project. I have been considering a podcast for several years, and it's taken all of that time to identify 3 key reasons for taking this leap. The first is that I have written a political blog of sorts, essays, very long multi-thread discussions. I've posted photographs, memes, and mainly political haiku poetry for all 18 years Facebook has been in existence. I cannot believe it's been almost 2 decades that mass humanity has been Facebooking, that I've been Facebooking. But we have, and for the 12 years before the Trump phenomenon politicized everyone, I used Facebook as a political platform, a kind of extension of the classroom or the forum, the salon. I was blogging about the bombing of Libya when most of my friends were still posting photos of leaf designs in the foam of their latte. So I've been going at it for quite some time, and when Facebook began, I very naively assumed that the democratization of media access, the fact that everyone on earth suddenly had their own media platform, that was going to lead to a golden age of global discourse, of discovery, of connections and networks, progress, prosperity, harmony, and a deeper mutual understanding. I was profoundly wrong so far. And the written word has long since stopped working for me as a medium on Facebook, but somehow I cannot give up on the idea that extended communities can connect meaningfully on the Facebook platform or any social media platform. So I'm going to try this format where you can hear my voice and I can hear your voices, and we can slip out of the complexities of the written language and that tradition and go back to an older spoken tradition. I hope that it's more human, more humane, and easier to make those connections and to have those conversations, because the written effort, the written activism has been a complete and total failure, or for the most part, but a failure for sure. So that's reason number 1. Number 2, I want to add my voice to the podcast universe, because as broadly as I listen and read and research across all of the continuum of the media spectrum, I very rarely hear what I think needs to be said, what I want to say, what I want to be heard, what I want to hear said. There we go. That's the right phrase. I just don't hear it. And I hear it in moments, and I hear it in parts, but never quite put together the way that I keep hoping for. Most people receive the vast majority of hard-hitting, important social and cultural and political information from either corporate sources that skew it into half and quarter truths or even open lies, or they listen to comedians who turn everything into a punchline. I remember a profound moment in the development of my own political consciousness, such as it is, when I was getting my master's degree in social science at the University of London. I went and I was visiting a South African friend in his dorm room to talk about an econ class we were both taking. And he turned on The Daily Show because that was the source in the early 2000s. And Jon Stewart was interviewing Jon Stewart was interviewing Don Cheadle about the film Hotel Rwanda. And for about half a minute, they spoke seriously about the Rwandan genocide. But in the end, it was a comedy show. So they had to, they had to start cracking jokes to fit the formula and get the ratings. And that blew my mind. I'd seen it before, and I'd understood that it was, gallows humor. Seen it throughout my life, of course, but I had been to Rwanda about 6 months after the genocide, and I'd seen the largest refugee camp in history, 5 million people living in the mud under little blue UN tents. I saw children dying of dysentery. I saw dead bodies floating down the Kagera River. So I've watched that political, the political comedy industrial complex, let's call it, basically turning raw human misery into punchlines like a sausage factory with very different eyes since that moment. And, I'm not here to scold. I'm not a scold. Gallows humor is a must, and I deeply appreciate the efforts of comedians who address world issues, who have the moral courage to do that. I think they're actually the people who cut closest to the bone. For example, I think George Carlin is one of the most incisive political scientists and cultural critics of all times. I listen to Jimmy Dore, I listen to Chris Hedges, Matt Taibbi, Russell Brand daily. I tune in daily to semi-mainstreamed alternative outlets like the Young Turks, like Kim Iverson. And the one deficiency that I felt from all of these sources is that every one of these people, genius people, so smart, so insightful, but they're forensic experts at deconstructing the corruption of the systems and institutions that rule the world. The problem, they can really address the problem and get rooted in the problem, but none of them puts any focus on solutions. And I think there's a reason for that. It's one thing to use your freedom of speech to complain, and if you get laughs out of it, that's even better. Or you can even do it seriously, serious complaints, serious charges, like Amy Goodman has been doing for decades. But if you start focusing on the remedies and solutions, then you're being truly subversive. And I want to try it. I want to try to be subversive and talk about not only the problems, but also the solutions at the Facebook friend level. And you're here, so I think you do too. So each episode will have some focus on the possibilities instead of just the horrors, of which there are many. And then the third reason is that there are some pernicious phonies out there and some sirens who lure you in and then chew you up. And so at this point, you have to realize that anything you get on any major quote unquote news outlet is informational Coca-Cola that is rotting your brain. Occasionally, as part of the hypnosis method, you'll see something real on MSNBC or Fox News. For example, the Michael Smirkonish Roger Waters interview was striking, very striking. The fact that CNN allowed Roger Waters to present views that were so contrary to those that are approved at the board level. Tucker Carlson, who I have considered to be paranoid waste case on so many issues previously, did a fine job of reporting the COVID wars, but only to the extent that his masters at Fox News allowed. So, they're out there. But, in the end, if you're watching David Muir on World News Tonight, you're getting your news from Mickey Mouse because the Disney Corporation owns ABC. And all of that's clear. All of that's clear to anyone who's willing to look. And the looking is what we hope to do through real conversations. There are also phonies in the independent and alternative media set as well. For example, I took it as a sign for the years I've been considering podcasting. I had this idea of doing like a peripatetic thing, because you have to have a gimmick, something that sets you apart so that you can actually speak to the issues. And I was going to walk around, wherever, call it the agora, the marketplace, and the fields and the mountains, and talk about the issues and call in guests, etc. And I was beginning to formulate that plan. That would be my platform, that would be my gimmick. And I was thinking it, and suddenly a journalist named Alex Christoforo appeared on my YouTube feed, like Siri was reading my mind or something. And he's a Greek-speaking Cypriot journalist, I think. He speaks perfect English with an interesting accent, like maybe he spent some time in New York or was educated in New York, or I don't know what. But I believe he's originally from Cyprus or Greece. And he reports from Europe with a strong European perspective, which is really hard to get in any real and meaningful way on other outlets. And I was really oh wow, he's taken the idea that I had to walk around and talk and be like Socrates in the agora, and he looks like Pericles giving the funeral speech at the Acropolis. He's got the beard and everything, and he walks around Greece and Cyprus talking about Western civilization's downfall, the hypocrisy and corruption, with great acumen and insight. And I was really taking a lot out of his shows, but as I continued to watch, I then realized, wait a minute, he's a Putin propagandist. He keeps talking about how amazing Putin is. He thinks the sun rises and sets with Vladimir Putin, and that Putin is not part of the globalist cabal that manufactures wars and financial crises and pandemics, like Biden and Macron and van der Leyen and everyone who he's calling out with in such a pitch perfect way. So now I actually go to watch him to find out how the Kremlin wants to seed perspective within Europe. I basically go to him for the borscht. And he's out there, and he took my idea and made good with it. And so I want to start podcasting as a counterbalance, because the world needs all the counterbalance it can get. So yeah, that's my rationale, my 3-point manifesto for joining the podcast Omniverse. I should make a rhetorical appeal to ethos and talk about my credentials, since that seems to matter the most to many people, even though I have discovered throughout my life that it is truly meaningless. Some of the greatest scholars and thinkers and poets and philosophers I've ever met were the ones who avoided any kind of formal schooling. But I do hold an undergraduate degree in anthropology from the University of New Mexico and a master's in social science that was very reluctantly given to me by the University of London. I've taught special education, English literature, creative writing, history, political science, government, economics, philosophy in Africa, Asia, Europe, and what is left of America. So I think I can offer a unique perspective, also because I grew up on a hippie commune in the very late phases of the American counterculture, the great countercultural revolution that seems all of a sudden to have started and flowered long ago, because it's no longer happening. That much is clear, but that's the reason for my far-out cosmic name. I've also traveled the world. I've taken all the so-called great courses. I've studied exhaustively on my own. And I think one of the most important points of perspective that I have to offer most recently is that for the past 2 years, I have lived on a Native American reservation. And, just when I thought I knew it all, understood it all, I have been deeply dismayed by what I've seen down here in the sub-basement of the American dream. And that needs to be talked about, especially since people are so fascinated with imperialism and what's happening with the Ukraine war. I wish they had sent the 80 billion here. I wish Joe Biden had sent the 80 billion here. So we need to discuss that as part of our real conversations. What else? What else do I have to qualify me, to validate the uniqueness of my perspective? I was voted most unique. Here we go. I was voted most unique in my graduating class at Taos High School in 1989. And if you had been in Taos at the time, you'd know just how unique that was, how unique my perspective is to have been noted in the yearbook as most unique in Taos in 1989. But then, of course, uniqueness isn't enough in podcasting. You also have to have a shtick, because you have to have a shtick if you want to shtick it to the man. So I've got a little list of gimmicks here. Let's see, where's my little notebook here? Let's see, because the mission of the project is raw, real conversations, we will have a 5-star audience-generated real conversation rating system, like a real-o-meter, where if 1 star is the Kardashians nattering over Fendi purses, a 5 is Malcolm X speaking in Harlem, or Julian Assange dumping documents on WikiLeaks. What other gimmicks? Okay, the podcast is going to be low budget, low tech, low production, just me and my phone. Low production values. Let's see, to maintain total focus on content. I was also thinking about eating a 10 milligram cannabis gummy at the outset of every podcast to see how my heart chakra is affected, like halfway through. But of course, gummies are expensive, which conflicts with the low budget goal. So we'll just have to see how that goes. I'm thinking of trying for an hour show, because there's always so much to say in a real conversation. So musical and spoken word interludes are a great hope. But again, the biggest gimmick is just to try to talk solutions after talking about the problems. And in doing so, maybe generate some hope and action at the local level, at the level of Facebook friends, the Facebook friend level. Nietzsche said that hope in reality is the worst of all evils because it prolongs the torments of man. But hopelessness does the same thing, so why not go out imagining something good happening, right? The best thing I can hope for with this show is that it will bring out streams and torrents and rivers of illuminating dialogue with all of you. I want to interview every one of you who is willing. I invite you to drop your own voice notes as comments. This is like a voice memo podcast with an open-ended interactive invitation to everyone who's listening. So let's have as many voices as people who are willing to join in. And let's have some real conversations. Let's learn together. Let's eventually listen to some music and poetry. I hope to make that happen. I'm so low tech that I can't even conceive of how to do it. But and of course, I want to keep things low tech, but not so low tech that we can't have some music and poetry at some point. Let's see what happens. I'm just sincerely grateful that you have subscribed. I will interview my first guest, my wife, the brilliant and gorgeous and mysterious Megan Bradley, sometime this week. She may also be my co-host if she decides there's any wisdom in it. And, it's such an open source forum. If any of you wants to interview someone and drop the interview here in this group, please do it. Maybe we'll start an entirely new method of communication that will do something to actually revolutionize social media and help it to become what it once promised to be. That's it. Yeah, that's the introduction to ARC Podcasts. Thank you so much again for showing up. Let's talk.